It's like a dream. It's like a miracle. We had fun. I tell you, that was the happiest days of my life.
I think that Gus had a good concept, really did. I look at it and say, I don't feel like 50 years. Wow, did that go quick? I just said, hey, we can do more.
I don't think you could say there's a year that it hasn't gotten better.
Minds change, colors change, modernization comes in.
I was trying to sell the company. Jim and George wanted the company in the worst way.
I think the biggest thing in the restaurant business is if you don't like people, get out.
We gave great product, great service,
That's why good franchisees do really, really well.
but those values need to stay.
We believe then we can do anything, anywhere in the world.
Create the right strategy for the company. The blueprint is very important. You have to have a plan that everybody can buy into and everybody can follow. Once you have that, then I think you have to hire the right people.
It is not the money you're looking at, it's the growth, and you see your company going, wow, to me that's what it's all about. And I'm just proud to be part of it.
We need to bring new people in, get new ideas, but the culture has to stay.
I'm one little piece of it, and the same as my partner.
This is the legacy and the history of Boston Pizza. I came to Canada the first time in early April 1958. I left Greece for Holland to board the boat as a sailor. We stayed in Vancouver for about 7 days. A lot of guys, they used to jump the boat in the States. But I heard if they get you to there, they send you to Texas and in a pig farm, feeding the pigs for years. I went down to the station and I asked for a ticket to Calgary. And I arrived in Calgary at 6 o'clock in the next afternoon. A guy was coming on a bike. He looked like a Greek to me, you know. So I told him the truth. I jumped the boat and I'm last in Calgary and I don't know where to go. He found me a room in a friend of his house. Took me to a restaurant and I started washing dishes there. The owner's brother was a guy by the name of Jim Codon. Kentucky Fried Chicken came first in Calgary. The first Kentucky Fried Chicken came in Calgary, 1958. Mr. Codon took me out by the hand and he says, you see this? This guy is going to become a multi-millionaire. And if I was young, I'll take the franchise. He says, that's the opportunity I'm talking about. And that stuck in my mind, you know. Chris Petropavlis came from Montreal in the early 1962. I said, what are you going to do here? He said, I'm here to open up a pizza house. I said, what? A pizza house? I never heard the word pizza. There was no pizza in Calgary at the time, no pizza whatsoever. In the beginning, he didn't have no customers. I said, well, how are you going to make it? He says, they will come. As soon as they taste my pizza, they come in. He was right on. 6 months later, the place was packed. And I said, Jesus Christ, this thing is going to go somewhere. And one afternoon while I was there, Chris came over to the table and says, why don't we go in business together? It took me about a minute. And I say, okay, but I got to ask my brothers. In 5 minutes, we decided we'll go to business. Everybody wants to call it a Greek name. But the Greek names, they were big, hard to pronounce for the English people here. And I thought Boston is the historical city in the States. As well, we use that name because Boston is the easiest thing to pronounce. And this is how we founded the Boston Pizza. Me, Chris Petropavlis, the guy with the idea and the pizza recipe, my brother Trifon, my brother Perry, and my brother Nino. So we live on eggs and pasta and pizza. And sometimes we slept right in a restaurant, down on the floor. And one night, my brother Nino, he went to a dance down in the south side where the Privileges played. They were very, very good band. They have followers, a lot of followers. And Nino talked to the boss of the band and invited them over for a pizza. And they came there with about 10 guys. And that was the beginning of the Boston Pizza today. And we never looked back. We stay open till 4 o'clock in the morning on the weekends. We start to have fights. because the guys used to come in late, drunk, and so I hired a policeman by the name Dan Spence. He introduced us Jim Treliving as an RCMP officer. And of course, Jimmy being with a nice smile, likable guy, very likable guy, because he's easy to talk to, and we used to have a lot of fun with him, jokes and everything.
1964, I got stationed in Edmonton. It's a great, vibrant city. I loved Edmonton and still to this day do. The restaurant community in Edmonton that time was nothing like it is today. There was new places, but there was a lot of steakhouses. But it was just eat and get out. I'd met this friend of mine, this Don Spence guy, was a city policeman, and he said, let's drop in for something to eat. You know, it's a pizza place, an Italian place. I'd never had a pizza in my life. I didn't know anything about Italian food. I was an Anglo-Saxon guy growing up in the middle of the prairies, right? He asked me the order, and I said, well, I'll have a pizza. My first bite of the pizza, I'll never forget it. It was really, really good. And I thought, wow. Went back about a week later, we walked in, and again, it was packed. So you went to the bar first. You never went to this place at 5 and 4 in the afternoon, and we could afford it. And it was interesting because it was so different. I'd never been in a restaurant like that.
The guy from Ched Radio, by the name Dave Anderson, he used to come and talk to me all the time about advertising and everything. He says, why don't you make a smaller pizza, individual size, about 8 inches? You call them nooner. You serve them from 11 to 2. So we tried the nooner, and that was the great success. By 12 o'clock, I have 2 counters full of pizza orders. $860 for noon, with 89 cents pizza, and a small oven. Amazing the success we had. A couple of years later, he came up with another pizza, the Hawaiian pizza. And I thought he was nuts. How you mix pineapple and bacon? That became our bestseller forever. The ideas of people, they help you. I decided that we need a logo for the sign. And I put them down with my brothers and the franchisees, and we all choose this one. And that's how the logo came about. What's different with the stuff that on it? And that's what makes us choose it. It stands out, especially in the background. I say white and red and blue.
The word came that I was being moved and I was going to Toronto, and that was what really turned my crank around about what I wanted to do. The guy that became my partner, Don Spence, Don was sitting in the restaurant, and I couldn't figure why he was there every Friday night. What he was doing is getting paid to be there as a bouncer because it was tough. He was in uniform and he was the bouncer. In comes this little guy with dark hair and short guy, and he introduced me. This is Gus Adjarides. Shook hands, and that's where it all started. That's when I found out that Gus wasn't an Italian. He turned out to be Greek. He was the partner that made the thing work with other brothers. He was the guy that started it with Chris Patropavlos out of Calgary. Until he came back and said, you know, you're good at this. You're here every day. Why don't you try and get in the business? That's how the word franchise came up. And I said, well, be a franchise, what do you do?
Jim came in one day and with Dan, he said, we want a franchise. I said, what the hell is a franchise? He said, you give us a franchise, we pay you royalties. Jimmy seemed to knew about it. I didn't know. I never heard the word franchise before.
He mentioned it to me and said, you know, here's what it costs to get in. It costs $5,000.
A week later, he came up with 8 pages of a franchise agreement. And this is how we started the first franchise actually in Padilla. At the time, Boston Pizza was the first franchise ever created by an Alberta in Alberta.
I had to go and borrow the money, and that's where I went back to see my father and all that sort of thing. I looked at him and I said, you know, I need $5,000 and I need a hand. And he said, no, you need a psychiatrist first. So he's very disappointed that I wasn't in the RCMP. And he said to me, you're going into business with a bunch of Greeks selling Italian food, and you don't know anything about business. What the hell are you going to do? He said, go to the bank. So I went up to the bank, and the bank manager was a good friend of my dad's, and told me what my whole deal was. And the next thing I knew, I had the loan. 3 years later, when I was getting near to my final payment, I found out there was no loan. My dad had paid it off the day there. He just wanted me to make sure that you knew you had to make payments on money you borrow. So it was a great lesson. Probably 10 years later that I took him to Hawaii, that he realized maybe this pizza business, as he called it, was getting to be okay. We signed the franchise agreement in Edmonton. We then moved out, took our U-Haul, and a station wagon, and we hauled the stuff out that we bought for all used equipment because we couldn't afford new. We looked at Kelowna, but there was an empty building in Penticton. We moved in there, and then we went in and opened our first store. I moved out there in January of 1968. Don stayed in the police force because he needed to have the income. We couldn't have two incomes. I did the contract, sort of the general contracting, to build the first store. So that started in January of 68, and we opened on May 23rd, 68. And that was our first day. It took $112 in the first day. Thought we were going to be millionaires.
1968 was a pretty amazing year because that was the year that we did move back to Penticton. I just was out there to be a successful CA in public practice, and that's what my dream was, and I was doing it. I heard that there was a pizza place in town, and it was worth trying out, and so we went. Event, great pizza, great environment, lots of that energy. There were other pizza places in town. They didn't compare at all. You know, there were two guys there, Jim and Don were at that point partners, and both of them worked in the place.
Our business was managing the business. It wasn't sitting down and doing books at the end of it.
In September is when I know formally that I met Jim.
We went 3.5 weeks before we had a Friday night where we took in over $150, and that was huge. We thought that was big time. We didn't know that we were in deep, deep trouble.
Jim had called and said, could he come and see me? And I said, sure, come on in.
So he sat down with us and we started going through this stuff. And that's when we really realized that we were really behind the 8 ball.
What had happens especially in an environment like Penticton where you have the very busy summer months, is that you get the big business, and then September the 1st, everybody goes away.
Well, the first time we were told that we need to do something was through our bank. You know, you should go across to Peak Marwick, across the street from us, and go and see them. They have some good accountants.
Between he and Don, they had not had time since May to deal with any of that stuff. There was a box of bills, and the bank account was pretty slim. You know, how can we handle this? There's a few ways to do that. One way is to hide and cry and do whatever you want to do. And the other way is to deal with it and talk to people and explain to them what's going on.
We had to go and sit down with all the contractors and say, hey, we don't have the money to pay you, but if you give us time, we will do this. We'd paid some, but not a lot. So he ran the meeting. That
was really probably one of the first trigger points for me in the relationship with Jim, was the fact that there was not going to be any hiding.
We would give them checks, and finally on the 3rd year we paid it all off. So that's how we met. He became our accountant for our company.
I remember him as a guy who was passionate about his business. We definitely hit it off. I mean, we were talking the same kind of language, very strong in the people side and wanting to do well in business and working hard, and he was very, that was a home run. As far as the financial side of the business, no, but it really was an underfinancing problem. The amazing thing, even at that time, was the economic model was really valid. It was really valid. And the only reason somebody's going to defer a bill is because they think they're going to get paid, and they think they won't if they don't.
In '68, I came into the business, and I came right out of the police force. I didn't smile much. A friend of mine came in one day. He said, you haven't changed a bit. You know, those are not suspects coming through the door. Those are customers. You better start smiling, or you're not going to have any of them in here. I think the biggest thing that I learned in the business right away is that you had to take care of the customer. And that meant, asking yes, please, no, thank you. That's hard for a policeman to do. You know, we tell you what to do. We don't ask. But I knew how to walk up to people and not be scared and look you right in the eye and say, is everything good? Is your food good today? I think the biggest thing in the restaurant business is if you should be in this business if you like people. If you don't like people, get out. If you don't understand that this is what you're doing as a catering job to people that are coming to your restaurant, treat them like you're coming to your house. And that's why good franchisees do really, really well. They know the name of the customers, they understand them, they ask them, what they like and what they don't like, and they service them. That's what it's all about. It's service, service, service. I kept talking to Don about another store. And we had sort of got to know the guys at the Federal Development Bank really well, and they were prepared to do more loans and stuff. So we jumped in the car and drove up, and it's a vibrant city. They're building pulp mills. It was, you know, it was going business up there. All young people fitted in with us. We opened our next door. And it was the first store in Prince George that had a full pizza restaurant. And what we thought was volume in Penticton was nothing compared to what we hit when we got to Prince George. We got Prince George going. I'd been to Prince Rupert Station over there for a while. We get there, I see this sign. I said, Spence, I'm going to phone and see what they're charging for rental on that thing. What for? And I said, well, you know, we could put a Boston Pizza in there. Are you crazy? I said, no, why not? You know, there's an empty building, and look at this town, it goes crazy too. And it was in February of that year, in '73. That was the first time that I went to George and said, you know, we need somebody beyond just a bookkeeper. Why don't you come into the business with us?
I had a contract with Pete Marwick that expired at the end of March. So I went out and started looking at different opportunities. And I had some really good clients and good friends and great business. And there was Jim. Hey, we'd got along really well. It was an exciting business. I liked it. It was fun. They were good people. There was lots of growth potential. And all of a sudden the two meshed. That's when he proposed, let's grow this thing and get it going.
I actually convinced him that he should come with us.
I said, I want to be an equity guy. I'm not coming here for wages. I need X number of dollars to keep the food on the table for the family. Other than that, I don't want any more. What I want is I want to build a business. So Jim said, okay, fine, we'll do that. So we talked about those kind of things and agreed on a deal, and I said, let's go. Became the business guy. I dealt with the banks. I dealt with the managers, percentages, and food costs and labor costs, and did all that kind of stuff. So that was my role.
We started to look around for other restaurants. We had no rights under a contract with Gus at that time to do anything more. And about that time, there was some conversations going on within the organization of Boston Pizza and Spaghetti House about a new partner coming into the business. And this is when we heard about Ron Coyle.
So I hired a guy that was a banker. His name is Ian Berrigan. He knew Coyle because they grew up together.
Ian is the one that talked me into buying White Avenue. And I bought White Avenue, and it turned out to be a good thing. We still had 20 pizzas, but we had pizza on our menu and spaghetti. Boston Pizza and Spaghetti House. I used to just clean the sidewalks in the wintertime. I'd do the payroll, I did the county, I did everything. I'm not scared of work.
I like Ron, and I'm glad I gave him the franchise because Ron was a very good franchisee, actually.
I loved it because it was making money and was simple to operate. The recipes were the biggest thing.
Sauces my older brother George used to make. He had a secret place that went there, locked himself up and make the sauces. And nobody knew what he was putting in.
And we had fresh dough, fresh green peppers, fresh everything. And he used to bring sacks of oregano in.
Our oregano was the best because we have people picking up just the head of the oregano. My brother George went to pick up it one day. They thought it was marijuana in the customs.
FBI thought it was marijuana. Really, true story. They used to check it out. But anyway, there's the oregano. You know, they built the commissary. They had the commissary so that they'd get their food consistent, fresh food every day. When I operated at White Avenue, they would bring my dough over in a big barrel. And if it was a warm day, the yeast would act, and then it was a bigger.
The more business you do, the more advertising you need to keep the business you going and grow it. So I didn't mind to spend the money. In 1977, I spent over $150,000, which was unheard for the times, you know. At the same time, we were doing lots of advertising with the hockey players. We have the Oil Kings. We sponsor them big time. So I had about 12 other hockey teams that I supported in Edmonton, 4 football teams, and a couple of soccer teams. We used to support the young people because the young people was the future for our business.
We decided that we needed promotion, and it was just for Valentine's Day. The heart was made with a little insert in the pens. Eh? It was a winner right out of the gate, the heart shape. People would come there and get engaged, and it was just an exciting time.
Ron actually, when he found out that I was thinking of selling, he approached me. He says, we'll buy the company.
And we made Gus and Ian a deal of $3.5 million.
So we negotiated the deal, we sold the company. Just as simple as that.
I always believed in people. So the first thing I thought we should do in our group is have a franchise meeting, which we did. I think there must have been about 30 franchisees at that time. I thought that every franchisee should be awarded something. So the first year I gave away the pinky rings as a gift to all the franchisees. And then the second year I gave this watch away, and see Boston, the logo Boston Pizza in the middle of it. I said, you work hard for me for 5 years, you can go do what you want to do. And most of them did. Gus already had it named Boston Pizza Spaghetti House. I wanted to stay with the Boston Pizza International. I knew we'd be international someday.
Ron buys the company, there's a transition period. He comes out and learns what we're doing.
One thing he made very clear at that time was that he wanted to be the franchisor.
So we'd had some dealings with him before. I like Ron, he's a great guy. He was a banker, he was a very astute guy. I loved him.
We'd been doing things that were franchisor-like in British Columbia.
We're doing our own advertising with our own agency, and they weren't even doing any of that. They had 2 sizes of pizza, we had 3. We had a sandwich that Gus didn't have on the menu at that time called the Boston Brute.
And he didn't want that anymore, which was the right thing to do. He was 100% right.
So when Ron took over the company, he phoned and said, you guys got to get that out of your hands and give it to me. We didn't even have franchise agreements in some stores. So we had to clean all that stuff up. And when he came in, that's what he did.
He wanted to create an operations manual, he wanted to take over co-op advertising, he wanted to do all that stuff.
He took our system